Over time, track fives in the Taylor Swift fandom have become, alongside her lead singles, some of the most important songs on her studio albums. The 11 songs that Taylor has chosen to highlight by placing them as track fives all follow the pattern of being extremely vulnerable ballads. But what if she hadn't chosen those particular tracks? Which other songs could live up to the emotionally devastating reputation this particular placement on her albums has? Welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we break down her lyrics, deep dive into full album retrospectives, and theorize about what may be coming next. As always, we are your hosts, Lisa and Cameron, and in this episode, we're going to be attempting to pick out different track fives for all of Taylor's 11 studio albums that we think best embody the spirit of these mythologized songs. We have previously made an episode about track fives where we classified all of our favorite track fives and deep dive into the lore of it all, explained all of the different ones, and then we updated that episode just recently with the Midnights and TTPD track 5. But we are going to be kicking off this episode with a very similar explanation to last time, which is basically just telling you what Taylor has said about this placement on her albums. So according to Taylor, track fives have become like the most vulnerable tracks on the albums. At first, the placement was basically coincidental, not really done intentionally, just placed there, and it kind of like became a pattern. Later down the line, after fans noticed this pattern, Taylor did then begin to place track fives intentionally. They're not necessarily the saddest song on the album, it's more that they're the most like openly vulnerable, personal, honest, emotional. It can hit kind of like different notes, but in general it just has this very specific feel to it. Over time, track fives have evolved and changed in a way. There used to be more very much like heartbreak songs, and now they can be vulnerable in different ways. I think she's explored different emotions and different types of vulnerabilities depending on the topics that she's speaking about. It doesn't just have to be like heartbreak, but all in all they do share this feeling of like intense emotions that are very vulnerable. As ever, we're going to be going through all of Taylor's albums in chronological order, starting with debut and speaking about which alternate track 5 we would choose if the original track 5 didn't exist. Like, which one of the other tracks would we basically replace it with? Which one has the honor of being a track 5? Because it is a very, very important placement.
Yes, it is if anything, it's probably the highest honor in placement on a Taylor album.
I think so.
Opener and closer is important. Track 5 is like, you know, you are kind of in a very prestigious kind of group. You know, only a very select few songs have that kind of title. So yeah, it's definitely a very, very high honor. And nowadays must be something that's quite a complicated task to pick the one that holds up.
Definitely. There's a lot of pressure around it to pick a good one. And like you said, obviously lead singles nowadays, we don't really get them from Taylor anymore. So there's not like this big pressure around songs being a lead. Openers and closers are very, very interesting. But those track 5s, I think mainly when we do get track lists, I don't know about you guys, you can let us know in the comments, but I always look at that track 5 and like try and...
Me too.
Yeah. What's
exactly.
What's she going to tell us in this one? So
exactly. That's the thing, because I feel like openers and closers are more about like the vibe that they add to the album, how they open the album. Often they're kind of like either the most kind of like biggest, happiest, like way to open up the kind of world and the vault of that album of like, here's, you know, how the rest of the album's going to go. And then the closer is often kind of more of a kind of slightly, often kind of more of a, like a melancholy kind of close and reflection on what's happened. Whereas those track 5s, you know, they've got to be pretty solid stuff because they're going to be compared to things like All Too Well and Dear John and
This Is It.
You know, really, really intense songs and fan favourites. So
let's start off with debut as always, and the original track 5 is of course Cold As You, but let's imagine in the world that Cold As You doesn't exist. There is no track 5 there, so we've got to add our own from the pool of existing debut songs. I think we're going to coincide on this one, but I'm not sure.
Okay, interesting. I'm not sure either. You go first. I'm intrigued to hear yours.
Okay, so I have chosen Teardrops on My Guitar.
Interesting. That's not what I chose at all, and not the one that I thought. Explain your reasoning, and then we'll get into it.
So I did try. There's different things that we could have tried to do here. Obviously, one of the things that we could have done is replace the song with a similar song as we can. So obviously, Cold as You is a very like heartbreak ballad on piano. I think Teardrops is very devastating in the heartbreak kind of way, right? It's very sad. It has a lot of sad lyrics, and it is quite an iconic song anyway. So that's the way that I went, but I know there's other ways that there's different vulnerabilities that are explored on debut as well. I kind of tried to follow the pattern. I'm not going to do that for everyone. We'll soon see that. I did think of other ones, maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you did then.
Yeah, so I was thinking, if I was going to go, like, this is a bit of a rogue thing, but, like, because there is quite a lot of vulnerable stuff on debut, so there was lots of things I was thinking about, things like Invisible, also tied together with a smile.
Right, that's what I was thinking that you might have gone with, yeah.
It was like a proper open nerve, but so even though that song is really emotional, it's not about Taylor. So there's something, that didn't feel personal. Like it was like this personal raw, because Taylor describes it as vulnerable, personal, honest, and emotional. Yep. Like
she does,
even though it is all of those things, it's not personal. Like it's vulnerable, it's honest, and very emotional, but it's not her. It's her kind of looking at someone else's experience. So, but for that, I was just like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like you're getting this kind of like open nerve of like her emotions. So that was a no. Invisible, I just was like, nah, not a fave. Then the other one that I was potentially like thinking about, and this would be if it was going to be like an upbeat 1989, what's it?
Okay. Kind of track 5,
all
yeah.
you do was stay, track 5. Would be something like The Outside, because The Outside could work. You know, that's very vulnerable, that's very emotional, being outside. And
it really is, yeah.
And watching people and not feeling included, but then I was like, that isn't track 5 at all. And then fortunately from my perspective, I was left with like Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw is so vulnerable, it's so personal, it's so honest, and I love this song so much.
If all else fails, Tim McGraw.
Yes, Tim McGraw. That for me does. I feel like it would live. I just love that song so much that for me it's like the best song ever made.
It hits all the notes always.
But I do think that it does compare up to, I think it could stand as a track 5 and stands as a very solid one. And I think it'd be quite interesting as well to open up your career with a track 5. Imagine if that was the case. That
is true.
One of the first songs we heard that then went on to be this kind of iconic.
It was a lead
tradition.
and a track 5, yeah.
So I kind of shoved it there. I think it was more just me personally trying to do it, but I really struggled with trying to find something, and I didn't even consider Teardrops. I hadn't even thought about that.
I think also like the parallel of, obviously we're going to see Dear John soon.
Yes.
Teardrops also has like Drew in the mix. I don't know. It felt like one of those traditional track 5s from the first like 4 albums, shall we say, that they're very similar in these first 4 albums. They follow this pattern of heartbreak, ballad, raw, emotional story about a horrible experience, basically, with a partner or whatever. Yeah.
And like you said, it falls into the kind of like first potentially 4 albums, first 5 albums, where it is all like heartbreak songs, so it definitely works. So I think I prefer that pick over mine. I think I was blindsided a little bit, not blindsided, I was short-sighted.
So wherever Tim McGraw is, we're just gonna but no, I get it though.
Where's Tim McGraw gone?
To be honest, I think I overlooked Tim McGraw simply because it is a lead single, so I couldn't like compute in my head that it was both things. It would be interesting if Taylor ever does lead singles again, if she ever did a track 5 lead single. That would be quite interesting.
So next is obviously Fearless, and Fearless tracks 5 is White Horse, and as we've mentioned before, White Horse is a Grammy award-winning song, so it was a pretty good track 5, and I think it really stands strong as a track 5. I think it's a really, really solid one, and to this day it's still one of the best, I think. But if obviously White Horse didn't exist, what would be next? And for me, Fearless I really struggled with, because even though there's a lot of songs on there, I was really struggling to kind of find something. And again, normally I would then go, okay, I'm just going to go to the platinum tracks because they're my favourite. But even those, the only one I could potentially put would be something like Forever and Always Piano, but that's a remix in my head.
Yeah, that's what happened to me as well. Yeah, I did think Forever and Always, but Forever and Always original is far too like angry and
it's
I don't know.
It's kind of story of us, better than revenge vibes. That's
it is. It has a lot of anger to it,
it's
understandably.
Not a track 5, is it?
Piano version changes it completely, but I also did think, it's not really. Yeah.
So I thought about it, then thought no, and then Fearless. To be fair, maybe I don't know. Maybe I wasn't thinking enough, but a lot of the songs are a bit more, they're not as kind of like heartbreaky, they're kind of like more like it's a lot of teenage angst, isn't there, in there? And the vault tracks, I thought about those, but for me those don't feel like Fearless tracks. They have always felt like these weird debut / Evermore songs.
Right.
So I struggled with those, because potentially something like We Were Happy might be quite good.
Right.
But I don't know. I was trying to stick to like what was originally on Fearless.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I chose Breathe, which is an interesting one, because Breathe actually breaks the tradition of a track 5, because it's
a little bit, yeah. It does. It does.
No features for track 5s.
No.
But I do think it is very vulnerable. It's definitely very personal, honest, and obviously very emotional. And I think it kind of does fit the early vibes, even though it's not a relationship breakup.
No, but it's still,
and you can view it as a relationship.
You can, yeah,
like that.
Yeah, no, it hits the right notes. Actually, I really like that. It does hit all the right notes. I actually did go to the vault.
Yes.
And I went to Don't You. I was thinking We Were Happy or Don't You, one of those two, and I went for Don't You in the end. But to be honest, I prefer your pick for this one.
Yeah, because
I think Breathe is good.
They are more like traditionally a bit more track 5.
But vulnerability.
I struggled to see them as a Fearless song. I don't know.
I know, but I think in terms of vulnerability and like personal, honest song, I think Breathe hits better. I don't know why I overlooked that. I just don't know. There's so many. I think in my head I was like, I know. Vault track, they're so like heartbreaking, which they are, but I think, like you said, I prefer your option for sure, 100%. And that leads us to Speak Now, and this one is a big one, because this track 5 is, I think, a lot of people's favourites after All Too Well. I think probably All Too Well is like right at the top, but a lot of people do love Dear John, and I think Dear John is kind of like the prequel in a way to All Too Well. In many senses. I think
that lyrically, even just lengthwise, for kind of being this kind of story that's being told
from start to finish.
Exactly. How the story unfolds. Yeah.
It's such a good one. One of my favourite Taylor Swift songs for a very, very long time. Yes, so we had to choose. If Dear John didn't exist, it would have been a terrible world, but if it didn't exist, I think you know what I'm going to go for.
Yes, I think we're both going to do the same thing.
Last Kiss.
Yes, obviously. It is the most track 5 song ever.
It really is.
It also has a lot of the track 5s have these kind of weird, not to use the cringe phrase, but like lore around them of like, you know.
They do.
All Too Well's got the scarf, and even Midnight's track 5, You're on Your Own kind of has the friendship bracelet. I don't know, they've all kind of influenced something, or there's kind of some weird lore around them in some way, and I feel like Last Kiss has that, you know, with the July 9th thing, and so I feel like it works.
It does.
It would definitely stand strong amongst the kind of others.
The length, the lyricism, the vulnerability, the sadness, the quiver of the breath in the original version. It all works. And if you guys are interested in this song, if you love it and want to hear more about it, then we do have an episode all about it, because honestly, I really do think that this one has, like you said, it does have a lot of story behind it and a lot of love from the fandom, so I think it would work, definitely.
So next is obviously Red, and Red probably has the most track 5 ever, especially with the addition of the 10-minute version, and that is obviously All Too Well. And for me, the 10-minute version, it even though I still love that original 5-minute, and sometimes I go back to it,
it's just
and it feels very like,
it feels a little bit empty, doesn't it? Now
it feels empty, but it does feel, when I listen to it, it does feel like it's like stepping into a time before the 10-minute version.
Right.
Like, it's really weird.
It does feel very 2012.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like back in time. It's really weird. But the 10-minute now is how I view All Too Well. But obviously that's a big kind of track to lose. Imagine if we didn't have that. Christ alive. Imagine if Better Man was shoved on there instead of All Too Well, and we found out All Too Well in 2021.
Oh my god, wild. That would be just like, I don't know. That makes me feel sick.
Imagine if that was like casually given to Little Big Town, and we're like, what are you doing?
In a parallel universe, That is what happened.
Yeah, which is crazy.
We have 10 minutes of Better Man. No, sorry.
No, but because of that, it's quite hard to pick. And for me, Better Man is not a track 5.
Right.
I don't know, like because I thought, realistically, that was the other option, I suppose. But I was just like, it doesn't hit, even though it's so emotional and one of my favourite Taylor Swift songs ever, it doesn't have that track 5 feel to it. And then I was really struggling to find one on Red. I was potentially thinking Sad, Beautiful, Tragic. But again, there's something about that I couldn't, I just was like, I don't know if that holds, if that would be a good contender up against things like Dear John and, You're on Your Own.
I know,
and things like that.
yeah.
I was like,
this is it, yeah.
And the only other one, which you're probably not going to like, that I thought weirdly does, is I Almost Do.
Ugh. Wait, I have to explain myself. I don't hate what I almost do. I don't. It's just one of my least favourites on Red. I don't know why. There's just something about it that I've never. It's never been a favourite. I used to skip it sometimes back in the day. But don't get me wrong. With Peace and Love, I do think it's a great song. But I don't know. Something about it is just not my fave. I get what you mean, and it's funny because Red is supposed to be like this devastating heartbreak album, which it is, but it was funny that I came to like the same problem. I was like, I don't know what I want to replace it with, because I guess it's because All Too Well is All Too Well. I think that's the problem. The bar is way too high, and here is where I broke what I was trying to do, because I was trying to replace with a similar kind of song, or a similar feel to it, which I think for now I've kind of done. But here I did think of Better Man, because obviously Taylor has said, like you said, that she was between those two, really. She went for All Too Well. But I put Nothing New, which is different.
I totally forgot about that. What an idiot. Yeah, no, that makes way more sense. 100%. Yeah. But that falls into I feel like the new...
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, no, it doesn't follow the feel of All Too Well at all. It's very like,
that's very like
different.
Lover, Folklore, potentially Evermore, and like Midnights. That's those kind of track 5s. The ones that are more like personally vulnerable, of like
exactly
a little bit kind of self-loathing and very like, oh, woe is me.
Yeah. Insecurities, exploring like these different facets of vulnerability that doesn't have to do with romantic feelings, really.
And what's interesting as well is that is also a feature. So if we were to go with our picks, we would have 2.
We would. That's funny. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it like that, but yeah. That's actually really curious. That leads us to 1989, and this is the first album that did break a little bit with the tradition, because, well, 1989 really didn't have any really like ballady sad moments, so we have All You Had to Do Was Stay as its original track 5. In an alternate world where this track didn't exist, I have gone for a vault track. It just makes no sense. I've gone for Say Don't Go.
Interesting, because that is, for me, because it's weird, a lot of the vault tracks you can be like, when you hear it, you're like, oh, I see why this wasn't picked. This is so similar to this. And that for me has always felt like All You Had to Do Was Stay is like sister.
It was just a little bit too on the nose. It was just a little bit it wasn't hitting the note of I'm fine, this is fine. Yeah,
exactly.
That's
interesting that you chose that. It's weird because I think for a lot of them I've tried to, I don't know, something about I've weirdly trying to stuck to like the original track lists for some reason, because I'm
I get that.
What was at play? So I kind of slightly I kind of skip past that one without thinking, but I do think that's good, and I think there's a couple on the vault that could potentially work. I was kind of tossing up between 3. One was either Clean, because that is the most kind of emotionally personal one, but it does feel like a final track.
It does.
It's always felt like a closer, not...
Clean, I think, is the most closer song, or one of the most closer songs that Taylor has made.
Because she goes through all of these kind of emotions and exploring kind of different areas of this relationship and stuff, and then at the end she realises she's clean and that she's kind of moved past it, which I think is such a kind of beautiful way to structure an album. So that doesn't make sense to put that as track 5 and then have like, you've still got things like Wildest Dreams and stuff later
afterwards
on,
it's like it doesn't
so I thought about that. Then I thought about things like This Love, but This Love is good, This Love is bad. So there's kind of an element of positive. It's kind of like an ebb and flow of like positive and negative. And I was just like, this isn't really overly like, it isn't just like purely vulnerable and emotional. There is that, but it's also kind of like, it's good and bad, whatever. So I was like, I don't know. So I went with Wildest Dreams. Because I do think I think sometimes when Wildest Dreams is one of those songs where it depends how it's performed. When it's performed,
if you think about that Grammy performance back in the day,
Grammy performance, or even the first half of the mashup with Enchanted on the 1989 World Tour, when it was just very much piano, there is an element of heartbreak, and I think that if it was, when you do look at it, it's quite sad. Like, you know, I hope you remember me in your dreams. Like, that's really sad that, you know,
that's the only way that they're ever going to be together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it does work, but 1989 was hard. It was
a complex one because of how it was made. It was made very purposefully like that. It is to be quite frank, it is a big coincidence that all you had to do was stay pretty much worked out. We can kind of fit it in there. We can say it works as a track 5. But if you listen to our episode about track 5s, you'll see that we feel it's not like one of the strongest contenders. Again, because 1989 was made that way. And I think the vault tracks, like you said, I think Say Don't Go probably would have been the one to replace that, but it was just a little bit too open. And that's why, just for purely that, I say I love you, you say nothing back, devastated.
Yeah, to be fair, that is a good idea. That if you just took that lyric out, you'd be like, oh, that sounds like it's come from a track 5 song. And I think that's the problem with a lot of 1989 songs. The production makes you think, oh no, but that's like, even I Wish You Would. Like, I wish you would come back. I wish, you know.
Oh, I know. I love that song, but if you think about it,
like a beat.
Exactly. Like, yeah. 1989 is just one of those albums that if Taylor turned around and did like I guess that's what Ryan Adams did in a way, isn't it? You turn around and make a different kind of like production, like give it a different production, and it makes it so different.
So next is obviously Reputation, and Reputation's track 5 is Delicate, which again I think is a really interesting one because it definitely feels like a track 5, and obviously then went on to be a single. Again, I think Reputation's a tough one as well because there's not others that really stand out as overly vulnerable and emotional, and Delicate definitely hits the brief. I don't know if it's weird because it is vulnerable, it's very personal, it is honest, but I don't know about emotional. I think, you know, like that kind of like you know, heart open, ripped open kind of feeling.
Yeah, it was a Reputation is quite a difficult album in that sense. Firstly, we have less to choose from because it's one of her shortest albums at this point.
And no vault, yeah.
No vault, no extra insights, but also it had such like a message to tell. It is a lot like 1989 if you think about it that way, and the track 5 is a lot like 1989, and this is now the beginning, the opening of like the floodgates of having vastly different track 5s.
Yes.
They no longer stick to this like pattern. We have a very different one here with Delicate, and again it's very vulnerable and open, but with a happy ending.
But then not happy in the end, unfortunately, but at the time was
as a song.
Yeah, definitely. So this one I did struggle with, and I think there isn't really a lot to pick from. You know, it's like I'm not going to pick This Is Why We Have Nice Things, you know, or Gorgeous. So I was thinking potentially King of My Heart, but doesn't feel vulnerable enough.
Right.
I don't know. I was just like, because again, that has a positive feel to it. So the only other one that I could think of was Call It What You Want, which has a similar kind of vibe to Delicate, but I don't know if it's. Oh, but again, it's positive. I just really struggled. I'm intrigued to see what you picked because I really struggled.
In my head, this was the only one that was going to work because it's the only one that it is a bit more like anxious and vulnerable and this is all going to go wrong. Dancing with Our Hands Tied.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. That's so obvious. Yeah.
Because it is all very much like the anxiety of it all. It is very delicate. It is like the play out of how bad everything could go.
Yes.
So that's why I think it's the only one that kind of could work.
I would definitely change mine. That makes so much sense. I think, again, Dancing with the Hands Tied, I think because of when I was like looking through the track list, I probably just thought, it's got a big old beat now, you know. But no, that's
there's a lot of different things to consider really when you do think of different track 5s. Again, would it hold up against the list that we're making? I think it might have been one of the weaker ones, but I think it fits.
I think is a little bit of an underrated song. I've always loved it. I feel like it's kind of this, it's a really cool, slightly undiscovered piece of song.
Under the radar.
Yeah.
Next up we have Lover. And for Lover now we're starting to go, because from debut to Reputation, all of those songs, they have varied in like tone and different types of vulnerabilities, but they've all been relationship, adjacent. But Lover now changes that, and we get The Archer as our original track 5, which opens up about vulnerabilities that are much more personal. It's no longer just related to romantic feelings. Lover was, for me, like, you were having trouble with Reputation, I was having trouble with Lover, to be honest, because I don't know, I feel a bit strange putting something like Soon You Will Get Better as the track 5.
Yeah. Again, that's kind of like Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, or things like Epiphany.
Yeah, it's like
really
so sad, but
they're kind of like they're later on in the album.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, there's something about those that they just kind of exist on their own sadness, not in like a categorizing it as a track 5 sadness. I don't know, there's something about them that I'm like, no, you can stay there.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll let you cry in the corner and I'll pick someone else because you're a little bit too much, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is extremely personal. It is extremely vulnerable. So it does fit in that sense, but I just don't, I don't like the idea of it being a track 5 in that way. So I was kind of stuck because what was I supposed to do? Put Death by a Thousand Cuts here? I don't know. So in the end, I've gone for False God.
Interesting. That's not what I expected at all.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I'm interested to hear yours, to be quite frank.
Yeah, because I think what's interesting about Lover is this was definitely the first time where it was intentionally chosen.
Yes.
And like,
this is very purposeful now.
This was when she was really talking about track 5s. Whereas I feel like even during Reputation, there's that thing that she said during the secret sessions where she was kind of like, oh, I did it again, the most vulnerable song's track 5, which feels a little bit like, oh, whoops. Even though there was a potential intention, but it still felt less,
this one was like I have purposely made and it is also like
this is a tradition that I am following,
and it's also like very purposefully made as well. Like, I'm going to explore my deepest, darkest like thoughts and worries, and you know, so I couldn't find one. I guess False God equivalates in a way to Delicate for me. Yes,
I was going to say that kind of parallels with Delicate, and as you know, I've kind of always had slight beef with The Archer.
I know you have, yeah.
So I'm more than happy to replace it. And it's not with the song. I think it's just about it being track 5. I've always had an issue about it being track 5. I don't know. I've never liked it because I've always felt like Cornelia Street.
Yeah, that's
so vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's so like
that is
true. I hope I never lose you. I hope this never ends. Like, it's so emotional, and like, because there is so much anxiety in that song. You don't know really.
That is true.
Even
it is very.
It seems positive. It's kind of like,
yes.
Will it? Like, if I lose you, this is going to destroy me. You know.
That is true. And now with hindsight, it's a bit tragic, isn't it?
Exactly.
I get it. And again, Cornelia Street is one of the songs that we've always kind of been like, or at least I've always harped on about it being like, it's like All Too Well, but with a happy ending. But
exactly.
Yeah. So no, I like that. Yeah. Again,
for me,
very Delicate adjacent, I think. Very Delicate-esque.
Yes, definitely. It fits in that kind of vibe. And like I said, does break what the intention of Lover's track 5 was.
I like that. Yeah, I prefer that one.
Kind of like personally introspective, but it does fit with the more kind of relationship element. Yeah.
No, I really like that pick. I completely agree.
So next is obviously Folklore, and Folklore's track 5 is My Tears Ricochet, which I personally believe is top 3. Probably track 5 for me, and in probably my top 30 Taylor Swift songs. Like, this song is insane.
Wow, okay.
Especially, I love this song, especially live. Oh my god. On the Eras Tour, this song was mental. Like, I love this song. I think it's so, like, the lyricism, the visuals, impressive. So for me, this is a track 5. Like, could not be more perfect. But if we lived in a very sad world where this song didn't exist, what would replace it? And there's so much sad songs on Folklore that it's kind of, you're slightly overwhelmed with, like, there's so much emotion, there's so much vulnerability, there's so much rawness, what the hell could you pick? And then trying to find something that, because obviously My Tears Ricochet is personal to Taylor, whereas obviously a lot of the other songs on Folklore are kind of fictional. But then I was kind of like, if I picked something that's personal, there's not really a lot left. You know, it's something like Epiphany, which again has a similar feel to things like Soon You Got Better. I'm not picking that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like genuine, like honest to put it as a track 5. No. I don't know, or it feels a bit too like invasive in a way.
I thought about things like Peace, but again, I just kind of struggled with that. So in the end, I picked This Is Me Trying, because that is so emotional and so raw. Yep. And you know, it's hard to be at a party when I feel like an open wound. It's hard to be anywhere when all I want is you. You know what I mean? Insane. So for me, I picked that, and I was quite happy with that. choice, because it feels similar to My Tears Ricochet, but doesn't personally live up to My Tears Ricochet. But I think it's a good contender and would work well, I think, track placement and stuff.
I agree.
But what did you pick? Because Folklore's kind of...
Yeah, I know, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. My Tears Ricochet is such a very specific track 5 in what it's doing, why she placed it there. Again, we are in the purposeful placements now, so makes a lot of sense, and it's a very specific thing that she's talking about. So I did think about This Is Me Trying, because I do love that song. I think it's such a good song, such an important message as well. But in the end, because I was trying to, again, find a song that could kind of equivalent to what we already have, I went for Hoax, because I feel like...
Interesting, yes.
The subject matter is in there somewhere, a bit different, but it's mixed with other feelings and emotions. But I think it is quite a murky song to kind of like break down, but very sad and quite,
I do think that's a good pick, actually. I hadn't thought about that. I guess, like you were saying with Dancing on the Handstand, how would you feel it lives up against the other track 5s? I feel like Hoax is potentially a little bit shy against the other.
Right, it's not going to be in your top 13. Yeah, I get what you mean, yeah. That leads us to Evermore. And Evermore's track 5 is originally Tolerate It. And again, we're talking about purposeful picks, and Evermore is such a dense album of devastating songs and just like really like heartbreaking ballads. So I don't know, this one is interesting, especially again with hindsight for her to have picked it. It's not my favorite song from the album, so I don't mind changing this as a track 5, to be honest. I think there's other ones that
I feel like
are
for me, Tolerate It, I do think is a good... for me, feels and sounds like a track 5. It's slightly a bit more pre-Lover track 5, or potentially even like pre-1989 track 5 of like the heartbreak song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of guessing what you've picked.
Right. This was actually really difficult because we were spoilt for choice, but at the same time, like, obviously for Evermore you can't go for like a very deeply personal one, because I believe, anyway, this is my opinion, but allegedly like personal emotions are buried within all of these layers of characterization of all of these stories, right? So
naturally, again, you've got to pull it from somewhere.
Yeah, so I did think of Happiness. Of course I did. But I didn't go for Happiness in the end, because I don't think that it is the correct one to replace Tolerate It. Happiness is a bit too like positive if you think about it in the end.
Yes.
If we're replacing Tolerate It, which is like such a horrible, like the person is so ambivalent towards you. They haven't treated you well. You feel like so small in comparison, and that is why I went for Coney Island. It's like telling the story of like this, it's so heartbreaking. It's like this relationship where the people like they stop caring, basically. Like, yeah, I didn't win you that arcade ring, we're sitting here and I'm wondering, where did that person who supposedly loved me so much, where did they disappear to? And Tolerate It is like that. I sit and watch you and hope that you're going to look at me, and you just never do.
Interesting. That's a really... I hadn't thought about that, because I feel like Coney Island, things like Coney Island, Exile, and things like The Last Time, for me, all kind of have a similar feel to them.
Yeah.
These two...
This conversation.
Debate. And weirdly, now thinking about Coney Island, I've kind of thought, actually, potentially something like Exile or even The Last Time could fit.
That is true, in their places.
Kind of
yeah, I guess they could.
I hadn't thought of. That's a really interesting pick, and I hadn't thought of that song from that perspective. I really struggled, but I do really like your pick. The ones I was thinking about was a little bit basic, but I was thinking things like Champagne Problem.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But it felt a bit like, like when we've done this before, you're like, that's the cop-out choice.
Yeah, so right.
Cameron, use your brain a bit more.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe things like the song Evermore, but that even has a hopeful note to it, and is a track... That is an album closer.
Oh God, like that is on in the league of clean, in my opinion.
Clean, yeah, 100%. So I was like, not that. Then I thought about Happiness, same with you. I was like, And then weirdly, I kind of thought maybe I'll go with something a bit rogue and go with like Right Where You Left Me.
Oh, I like that. Because it's very different. Yeah.
It's different. It's a little bit more kind of in the like all you had to do was stay.
It is. It is.
It's kind of like Marjorie again. that's a track 12, 13.
Yeah, no,
too sad,
yeah.
too personal. Not happening.
Yeah.
But I thought Right Where You Left Me is very emotional, is very raw. That is the kind of only emotion. There isn't really anything positive, really. It's very much like, I'm still exactly where you left me. I'm still a very broken person, which I suppose is similar-ish to Tolerate It, even though it's not. But it's still that kind of, you've kind of, look what you've done to me. I'm this kind of broken person. You can give a shit kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So I thought about it, but I'm not overly confident. But I do really like your pick. I do really like Coney Island. So next is obviously Midnights. And Midnights, again, I feel like I've got a long history with this song. Because obviously, track 5 for Midnights is You're on Your Own Kid. And initially, when Midnights came out, if you're a long-time listener or have listened to anything where we mention You're on Your Own Kid, we always mention this. I had major beef with it being a track 5. I don't know what my issue was with it, but
you were not happy about it. No,
you really had to persuade me to be like, no. Like, you had to argue its case. You were like, no, I think that this is why.
That's so funny.
And as time's gone on, I've really come to appreciate why it's a track 5, and I actually now see it as a really, really solid track 5 and really deserving of its place. And I think potentially it was reminding me a little bit too much of things like The Archer, in that it's kind of this kind of, kind of self-reflective song, and I was kind of like, ugh.
And the thing is, we had a pause of those type of songs for a couple because My Tears Ricochet can be related to like romantic things. It can be. It's not really. It doesn't seem to be anyway. But
whether it be
it's
romantic
exactly.
Or platonic,
you're right.
or
whatever. And then obviously Evermore, having Tolerate It, we went back to kind of like those original ideas of track 5s, and now we're back to a very The Archery kind of song. Yeah.
So I kind of struggled with that. So I've really come on to appreciate it. So then I was trying to think of what potentially could replace it. And in the standard Midnights track list, I couldn't really find anything that really stuck out. Potentially something like Maroon, but no, that didn't have the same vibe that I was thinking of. So then I kind of looked wider into like the 3am tracks. And then I thought potentially this song, but I don't know if I went with this. I've kind of got like a dash between because I couldn't pick.
Right.
I went with like would've, could've, should've, because that kind of is in the same vibe of like Dear John. But then I was like,
right.
I don't know. And then the only other sad song I could think of was Bigger Than the Whole Sky. But then that feels very Marjorie.
Yeah.
Sooner Get Better.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. So I kind of put a dash between the two and just thought,
okay.
See what Lisa says.
Well, yes, it's a hard one because You're on Your Own Kid does such a specific thing, and there, like just like The Archer does such a specific thing, and there isn't another song on Midnights at least that could kind of like replace it in the like the vulnerability that it does present to us. So I also had to go for something different and find a track 5 that was going to be similar but different. So obviously You're Losing Me is there.
Oh god, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah,
right. I only thought about it because you mentioned it when we were speaking about a different topic, I think in one of our previous episodes, and you said, oh, because You're Losing Me could be a track 5, and that's kind of like where we came up for the idea to this episode. So I thought you were going to go with that, but it is easy to forget because it is like tacked on right at the end of it all. I also wrote down Labyrinth.
Yeah, I did think about Labyrinth
original because
Labyrinth still kind of has a has a weird positive vibe.
It does. But so does You're on Your Own Kid. Like the friendship bracelets, take a moment and taste it, and you know. And then Labyrinth also explores that moment of being like, how
actually it's all right.
Like the good parts, and then like the bad parts, like how scared I am of these situations, like how much it still hurts from all of like the previous things that have gone down. I
think I would change my pick definitely to You're Losing Me.
Right.
I think
it's a traditional
track 5 of like this heart, and it matches things like Tolerate It, even things like Cold As You, really.
Oh god, yeah. It goes back to those original
track 5s, like White Horse and things. So no, I'm going to change my pick. I think because I was just like looking at the track list, I was just like, oh, which one?
Well, this is it. It's right at the bottom there.
You're Losing Me is this kind of weird bonus track that I've got on some playlist somewhere. Yeah. So no, definitely. I think You're Losing Me is a really, really good pick. But I do also like your suggestion of Labyrinth as well. I think that's an interesting one. The only thing that I would say with that is if it would stand the test of time against the others.
Right, yeah. I do love Labyrinth. It is one of my favourite songs on Midnights. So,
For you, it definitely stands.
It would for me, but I don't know if the wider audience would agree with me. So you guys can let us know, and let us know in general, what are your picks for all of these alternate track fives. Last but not least, we have our newest album that we're adding to all of these fun episodes where we go back and look at all the albums. Number 11 is, of course, The Tortured Poets Department. We're spoiled for choice here in a way, but I don't think it makes it easier. I think it's pretty hard because of what the track 5 originally is, how we could cheat in a way, but not, I don't know, we'll see what we've done here. But the original track 5 of TTPD is So Long London, and that placement, that is a loaded choice placement. That is like the most purposeful track 5 in years and years and years. It just works, doesn't it?
There was nothing accidental about that.
No. She said, not holding back. This is, I don't know. She just went into the studio that day and she said, I'm making a track 5 today.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was that.
She knew exactly what she was doing. But no, I think perfect placement, even though there are so many contenders and I constantly say, this could be. So Long London does make sense. But obviously there is technically an unofficial, illegal, 12, track 5.
Yeah.
Which is obviously How Did It End? So there is kind of that. But how did you pick? Because like you said, there is a potential cop out here.
Yeah, of course we could just cop out and say like,
the bait.
How Did It End? It is our replacement track 5, right? Which is obviously, and I know that last time we discussed this, you guys did mention it in the comments. Like some people were like, yeah, it counts more or less as another track 5. Other people were like, no, it doesn't really, because it's still one singular album. And I do agree with that.
Exactly.
It's just interesting and fun to kind of like analyze it as an extra one. But it does work. It does work. It's still placed in the right placement. So
exactly, that's the thing. It's like if the anthology was a totally separate album,
which it could have been if she wanted to do a Folklore Evermore suddenly.
Definitely, and 100%. But because of the nature of it, it is basically just additional deluxe tracks. But I do think that the placement of it was intentional.
Oh, so do I.
It was intentionally
it just
placed
works.
as a track 5. Yeah, even though it's technically not, I do think that it was intentional. But it is like an unofficial, illegal. Like even whenever TS12, not that I'm asking for that, quite the opposite, comes out, there will be this kind of like ugly sister that's like, oh god, have you seen her? She's also thinks she's a track 5,
this is it. Like, I guess she's a track 5. I guess this is part of it. Yeah.
But no. So what did you pick?
So I didn't pick How Did It End, because I didn't want to go for that one. So I think we might have gone for the same one, because I think you may have mentioned this. Love of My Life, Loss of My Life, whichever way you want to go. LOML.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's so sad.
It's that bridge. It's just so heartbreaking. Like, honestly, every time I listen to
it,
I'm
ending
in tears.
The ending is
just so emotional.
Yeah, twist the knife right at the end there. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. It's, again, more traditional in the original track 5, kind of what they were discussing. Very heartbreak, post-relationship. But no, it, for me, definitely stands out. I do think, potentially, because I was thinking, okay, if we were replacing So Long London with the standard track list, Love My Life, 100%.
Yeah.
If we were counting the anthology tracks as, say, that How Did It End was track 5, what from the anthology could replace How Did It End? Yeah. I was thinking something like Peter.
Definitely.
Could be a replacement for How Did It End?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we've kind of like said this before, because we're just such big fans of the anthology and of Peter.
Anything sad and vulnerable. Yeah. It's got my name written all over.
Definitely, yeah. It's always some of your favourites. So this episode we mentioned many of your favourite songs, really.
Yeah, honestly, so many of my favourite songs are track 5s when I think about it, or just the really vulnerable, emotional songs. And even though I love... Like, remember, I was obsessed with, like, Paris when...
Oh, my God, it was so random. I was like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I had major beef with the track 5, but, like, loved Paris. So I do love a fun, upbeat song now and then.
Yeah.
But traditionally, I'm a little bit more of a very, I want my heart ripped out ripped to shreds 10 times, then eat chewed up, ripped again, put back in, pulled back out again, and then put back in. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I like to be
Whereas
just,
I
emotional.
like a little album closer of it all. Give me a little bit of the silver
Something
lining
kind
of it's sad, but it's hopeful. That's
exactly,
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, talking about openers and closers, if you guys did enjoy this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let us know if you'd also like us to do an episode about, alternate openers and closers, because again, they're quite important choices for artists that really do care about the artistry of an album, which I think Taylor is definitely one of those artists.
Yeah, there is definitely a difference between kind of album artists and more single artists. And there's nothing wrong or negative about either or because both have their positives, and it's very interesting how some artists choose singles over albums and vice versa. But Taylor, I think, since day one, has always prided herself on being an album artist and having a body of work that is very intentional, tells a very specific story, and the track list choice is intentional, and a lot of thought has been put into how they've been placed. For better or worse, some track lists I've always found slightly jarring, like Lover, but others, especially 1989, I think was a very, very perfect
such a good one,
track list. Very, very perfect track. And even Midnight's, I think, as well, has similar to 1989, has a really, really solid track list. I've always really liked the way that album kind of flows. So it's interesting, but no, definitely for me, I would see her as a kind of album artist.
We've come to the end of this episode. If you guys did enjoy it, like I said, please let us know by leaving us a thumbs up on YouTube. While you're there, if you'd like to subscribe, please do so. We very much appreciate it. If you're listening on an audio only platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then make sure to rate us. And if you would like to keep up to date with us, then you can also follow us on Instagram. Our handle is @SwiftlySpokenPodcast. Other than that, we will speak again very, very soon. Hopefully, maybe we'll see Taylor soon. There's been rumours and
lots of AMAs, kind of anticipation. We will definitely be watching.
Yes, so this episode will be out just before the AMAs, so perhaps very, very soon we'll get a glimpse of her, but we'll be keeping up to date with that. If not, then we will be back very soon with our next episode in our Fact About Every Song series. Next up we have, of course, 1989, so see you then, hopefully. Thank you very much for listening, and speak to you very soon.